The sound was deafening, wood splintering, glass shattering, the earth trembling under the metal claws of two massive bulldozers. Charlotte Miller stood frozen on her front lawn, barefoot in her pajamas, clutching her 7-year-old daughter Lily as the machines tore into their dream home. Her husband, Tom, was yelling, screaming at the workers to stop, but no one listened. Dust filled the morning air as the walls of the house collapsed inward. Their family photos, wedding souvenirs, and every memory ever made inside that house were being crushed to dust in front of their eyes. "Stop! This is a mistake!" Tom shouted, his voice raw, his hands waving in desperation. One of the construction workers just shrugged and pointed to the clipboard. "Talk to your HOA. We're just doing what we were told." Charlotte dropped to her knees. "Tom, what's happening? Why are they doing this to us?" That's when Tom pulled something out of his pocket, a crumpled, unopened letter. The seal was from the Lakeside Community HOA. His hands shook as he opened it for the first time. "Notice of final demolition," it read. The ink swirled in Charlotte's eyes. Demolition? That was the moment her heart broke. 1 month earlier, the Millers had finally made it. After 10 years of saving, working 2 jobs, and living in a cramped apartment, they moved into their forever home in a quiet suburb just outside Austin, Texas. It was the house Charlotte had always dreamed of: white porch, big backyard for Lily, and even a treehouse Tom promised to build with her before Christmas. Neighbors were friendly, lawns were neat, and the air always smelled like fresh-cut grass. There was a peace in Lakeside that Charlotte never had growing up. The HOA had rules, sure, but Charlotte and Tom didn't think much of it. They paid their dues, smiled at the board members during block parties, and even volunteered for the holiday decorations committee. But something changed after their neighbor, Mr. Alden, moved out. Alden had been the HOA president for 10 years. He was fair and kind, a retired school principal who always waved from his porch. But after he left, the new board was led by a sharp-eyed woman named Brenda Carlisle. Brenda ran the HOA like a military camp. Her dog walked in a straight line. Her lawn had exactly 2 bushes, trimmed into perfect spheres. She never smiled. Never blinked. And she absolutely hated rule breakers. The first letter came 2 weeks later. Violation notice, unauthorized treehouse construction. Charlotte blinked at it. "But, it's just a platform. Tom hasn't even started the walls." Tom called Brenda, but she didn't answer. He emailed. Nothing. Finally, he knocked on her door. Brenda didn't open it. Instead, the next day, another letter arrived. This one was more aggressive. It mentioned daily fines, legal action, and something called community compliance escalation. Whatever that meant. Tom was furious. "This is insane. I'll just take it down." But Charlotte shook her head. "No. Let's just talk to someone from the board. This is just a misunderstanding." What they didn't know was that Brenda had been quietly collecting infractions. Photos of Lily's chalk art on the sidewalk. A tiny basketball hoop nailed to the garage. Even a garden gnome someone had gifted Charlotte on her birthday. 3 days later, the Millers were hit with a total of 14 violations. Each one came with a fine. And each one stacked interest daily. Charlotte tried calling the HOA office. They were unavailable. Tom emailed the official HOA attorney listed in the letterhead. No reply. They decided to go to the HOA meeting that Friday night. But when they arrived, no one would let them in. "Sorry," the guard said. "You're not on the approved guest list." "What?" "We're homeowners," Charlotte said. "This is about our house." "Take it up with the board," the guard replied, and slammed the door. 1 week later, the family received a letter that chilled them to the bone. Intent to foreclose. Foreclose? Charlotte gasped. They're saying we owe over $20,000 in fines, Tom said, his face pale. But that can't be legal. Charlotte cried. This isn't a mortgage company. This is a homeowners association. Tom turned to her, and for the first time, she saw fear in his eyes. I think they can. But the Millers still believed justice would prevail. They filed an appeal. Hired a lawyer. And waited. And while they waited, the HOA moved forward. Then, on a quiet Monday morning, before sunrise, 2 trucks rolled into the neighborhood. Charlotte woke to a rumble that felt like an earthquake. What she saw from her bedroom window made her scream. The bulldozers had arrived. As the first light of morning spread over Lakeside, the once serene neighborhood turned into a scene of chaos. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains. Phones pointed toward the Millers' home as the deafening crunch of demolition echoed through the street. But none of them stepped in. Not one person tried to help. Tom stood in front of the bulldozers, arms outstretched like a shield. Please. My daughter's toys are still inside. Our wedding albums. Our documents. One of the operators leaned out. Sir, move. We have a legal order. Where's the sheriff? Where's the court notice? Tom shouted. But no officer came. Just the HOA's private security, dressed in dark uniforms, standing silent with crossed arms and clipboards. Charlotte, shaking and barefoot, ran inside what was left of the house, desperate to grab anything she could. Lily followed, tears streaking her face. A chair leg snapped nearby as the wall behind them buckled. Tom rushed in after them. Charlotte. We have to get out. Now. The 3 of them bolted through the back door just as the kitchen caved in. From the sidewalk, Brenda Carlyle watched it all, arms folded, eyes cold as stone. Standing beside her was a tall man in a blazer, Mr. Winslow, the HOA attorney. She should have read the covenants, Brenda muttered. Winslow nodded. They signed when they moved in. Clause 42B gives full enforcement power to the board for cumulative violations. Unfortunately for them, it's airtight. Charlotte and Tom were forced to sit across the street with Lily, watching their life reduced to rubble. But how did it come to this? 3 months earlier. Back when the Millers first moved into Lakeside, everything seemed perfect. The welcome package included gourmet cupcakes and a rulebook as thick as a Bible. Charlotte had skimmed it. No inflatable pools, no lawn statues, no satellite dishes visible from the street. This is a bit much. Tom laughed. We'll be fine. We're rule followers. But they didn't know that in Lakeside, being fine wasn't enough. Brenda had been keeping a close eye on new homeowners, especially families with children. She hated what she called visual noise, kids' toys on porches, chalk drawings, colorful flowers that didn't match the neighborhood's palette. The Millers broke their first rule the day Lily drew a butterfly on the sidewalk. Then came the wooden treehouse platform. A basketball hoop on the garage. A wind chime. Small things. Innocent things. But to Brenda, they were a disease that had to be purged. She's doing this on purpose, Charlotte had whispered to Tom one night. She's targeting us. Tom tried to stay calm. Let's just clean up. We'll repaint the mailbox, take down the hoop. We'll comply. But complying only made Brenda dig deeper. 1 week later, Tom got a certified letter at work. It said the family was under review for repeated non-compliance, and that the HOA would begin legal proceedings if the infractions continued. He stormed into the HOA office. I want to speak to someone. Now. The front desk lady, a young woman with tired eyes, shook her head. You'll need to submit a written appeal. I have. Twice. I'm sorry, sir. The board has 30 days to respond. Tom's knuckles turned white. This is harassment. But the woman only looked away. You're not the only ones. Back in the present. With the house nearly gone, Charlotte sobbed into her knees while Lily clutched a singed teddy bear. Tom knelt beside them, face full of dust and fury. I'm going to fight this, he said. But he didn't know the worst was yet to come. A sleek black car rolled up beside the curb. Out stepped a man in a tailored gray suit and aviator sunglasses. He walked toward Tom with the confidence of someone used to winning. Mr. Miller, the man said with a grin. I'm Charles Denton. I just purchased your home lot from the HOA auction. Sorry about the mess. But hey, location, right? Tom's jaw dropped. They already sold it. Denton nodded. Foreclosure sale happened last Friday. Didn't you get the notice? Charlotte shot Tom a look of panic. No, Tom whispered. We didn't. Denton pulled out his phone. Anyway, I'm building a modern condo here. HOA board fast-tracked the approval. Pretty sweet deal. He turned and got back in his car, leaving Tom shaking with rage. But even then, none of them realized just how deep this nightmare went. Because the HOA had been planning this for months. And the Millers weren't the first family to lose everything. The dust hadn't even settled when the Millers were forced to move into a cheap roadside motel. The room was small, musty, and barely big enough for the three of them. Lily coughed through the night. Charlotte stared at the cracked ceiling, sleepless, her mind playing that demolition scene over and over again like a horror movie on repeat. Tom sat on the edge of the bed, glued to his laptop, trying to piece together what went wrong. But nothing made sense. How could they sell the house that fast? He asked out loud for the 10th time. It was our house. Paid in full. No mortgage. Charlotte sat up. What if they planned it? What if they knew we wouldn't open that letter on time? Tom nodded slowly. They timed everything perfectly. We were never supposed to fight back. That's when Charlotte remembered something. Wait, do you remember that guy at the last block party? The one who said his backyard fence got torn down by the HOA? Tom's eyes widened. James. From Ridgeview Court. Charlotte grabbed her phone. I think I still have his number. That night, they met James Simmons in a coffee shop downtown. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 6 months. They got me too, he said grimly. First it was a fine for a broken gate hinge. Then a letter saying my paint color was in violation, even though I used the exact brand they required. Tom leaned in. Did they foreclose on you? James nodded. Last November. I moved out 2 weeks before Christmas. Charlotte swallowed. What did you do? James lowered his voice and pulled out a flash drive. I started digging. He slid it across the table. That's everything I've found, documents, emails, maps. Brenda and her board are part of something bigger. There's a pattern here. Tom stared at the flash drive like it held the key to their entire nightmare. What kind of pattern? James whispered, they're targeting homeowners. Families. Mostly people who don't fight back or don't understand the legal process. They rack up violations, fine you out of nowhere, then fast-track foreclosure. Once they seize the property, they sell it cheap to private buyers or developers. Charlotte's voice trembled. But, that's criminal. James shook his head. Not if it's legal in the bylaws. They rewrote the rules last year during a closed-door session. Most residents never knew. That's how they get away with it. Tom's face went pale. So we were set up from the beginning. James leaned closer. They've already done it to at least 6 families on our street. I tracked the sales, 3 of them were flipped within 30 days to companies owned by the same man. Charles Denton. Charlotte gasped. The guy who bought our house. James nodded. Yup. He's been working with the HOA for months. Tom stood, fist clenched. We're going to expose them. But James looked away. I tried. I sent everything to the county. The mayor. Even the local news. No one responded. You want to know why? He slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside was a photo, Brenda Carlisle shaking hands with the mayor. Another photo, Charles Denton at a golf tournament with the city planning director. Tom's stomach turned. They're all connected, James said. The HOA. The buyers. The local officials. It's one big circle. Charlotte whispered, then how do we stop them? James hesitated, then said, you find the whistleblower. The one person inside who's scared enough to talk. 2 days later. The Millers returned to Lakeside, dressed in plain clothes, parking 2 blocks away. They weren't welcome in the neighborhood anymore. Their names were blacklisted. Their access cards deactivated. But Tom knew exactly who they needed to find. Her name was Erica. She worked the front desk at the HOA office. The young woman with tired eyes. The only one who didn't look like she belonged in Brenda's army of robots. Tom caught her just as she was locking up. Erica, he said, breathless. Please. We're not here to make trouble. We just need the truth. Erica froze. I'm not allowed to talk to you. Charlotte stepped forward, holding Lily's teddy bear. Please. They destroyed our home. Our daughter has nightmares. Just tell us what you know. Erica looked around, then quietly unlocked the door and motioned them inside. I shouldn't be doing this, she whispered. But you're not the only family. In the back room, Erica opened a filing cabinet and pulled out a thick red folder labeled Special Review Candidates. Charlotte's hands shook as she flipped through the pages. Each file had photos. Notes. Infractions. Calculations of projected resale value. Lily's chalk drawing was in there. So was the basketball hoop. Even a photo of Charlotte gardening. These aren't violations, Charlotte whispered. These are surveillance files. Erica looked down. Brenda calls them property optimization reports. She picks families she thinks are weak links, then builds a case to seize their homes. Tom stared at the papers. Who else is on the list? Erica hesitated. Then pulled out another page. It had 12 more names. Tom scanned them. He recognized 4 neighbors. Charlotte turned to Erica. Why are you helping us? Erica looked up with tears in her eyes. Because my parents are next. The air inside the HOA office felt thick with fear. Erica's hands trembled as she stuffed the red folder back into the drawer. If Brenda finds out I let you see those files, she whispered. Tom's voice was calm but firm. We're not going to let her destroy anyone else. Charlotte clutched Lily's teddy bear tighter. We have to do something. There are families on that list who don't even know what's coming. Erica nodded. There's more. Every week, Brenda holds secret meetings with Charles Denton and 2 other board members. They don't log them in the records. But I've seen her take documents out of the office, original deeds, sale approvals, signed waivers. Some of those people never even signed anything. Tom narrowed his eyes. You're saying they're forging signatures? I can't prove it yet, Erica said. But I've been making copies of everything she handles. I've hidden some of them. If we can catch them in one of those meetings, with documents in hand, it might be enough. Charlotte looked at Tom. This could be it. This is how we stop them. Tom turned back to Erica. When's the next meeting? Erica hesitated. Tomorrow night. 7 p.m. At Brenda's house. The next evening. It was raining. The kind of soft drizzle that made everything look calm and quiet. But inside the Miller's borrowed sedan, parked 2 streets away from Brenda Carlisle's 2-story home, tension crackled like electricity. Tom adjusted the small camera clip to his jacket. Charlotte checked her phone. The hidden microphone Erica had given them was linked and live. Lily was at a trusted friend's place. The Millers had no plan to run anymore. Tonight, they were fighting back. Tom stepped out, pulling up his hoodie. "Let's go." Charlotte followed, heart pounding. Brenda's house sat at the end of the cul-de-sac, dark except for a faint light glowing through the office window. As they crept closer through the backyard, Tom spotted them, silhouettes. 3 people, gathered around a table, papers spread wide. One of them was definitely Denton. Another had a laptop open, a signature pad blinking on screen. Charlotte pulled out her phone and started recording through a crack in the blinds. Inside, voices murmured. 3 more families this month, Brenda said. "We'll push the violations next week. Denton, have your buyer ready for the Carter property." Denton chuckled. "Already done. The zoning department's been greased." Another board member leaned forward. "We're flying too close. People are starting to talk." Brenda waved it off. "Let them. By the time anyone files a complaint, we'll be long past settlement." Tom clenched his fists. He had heard enough. But just as he turned to leave, his foot hit a rake. Clang! Inside the house, Denton froze. What was that? Charlotte grabbed Tom's arm. "Run!" Floodlights burst on. A motion alarm blared through the yard. The back door flung open. "Hey! Who's out there?" shouted a voice. The Millers bolted down the side yard, ducking behind bushes, hearts thudding. Behind them, a security guard shouted into a walkie-talkie. Tom and Charlotte sprinted through the rain, diving into their car. Tires screeched as they sped off. Tom breathed hard. "Did you get it? Tell me you got the recording." Charlotte held up her phone. "Crystal clear. We got everything." But just as they reached the main road, flashing red and blue lights filled the rearview mirror. A police cruiser pulled up fast behind them. "No, no, no," Tom muttered. "Not now." The officer walked up, stern and silent. "Sir, please step out of the vehicle." Tom obeyed, hands up. Charlotte's stomach dropped. "We just need to file a report," she said. "We're the victims here." The officer raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, we received a call about a trespassing attempt and potential burglary at Mrs. Carlisle's home. You've been identified as suspects." Charlotte gasped. "That's a lie. She's trying to silence us." Tom shouted, "We have proof. Look at the phone." The officer didn't even reach for it. "Please, step out of the vehicle, ma'am." 1 hour later. They sat in a cold holding room at the local precinct. No one had listened. No one had reviewed their footage. No lawyer had been allowed to speak to them yet. Charlotte leaned her head on Tom's shoulder. "She's winning, Tom. She owns everything. Even the police." Tom stared at the steel door ahead. "No," he whispered. "She doesn't own everyone." Suddenly, the door creaked open. It wasn't a police officer. It was Erica. And she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a tall woman in a sharp suit, badge on her belt, stern look on her face. "I'm Detective Rachel Marsh. I've been investigating HOA fraud across 3 counties," she said. "And thanks to your whistleblower." She looked at Erica. "We finally have something solid. I've already reviewed the audio and video. You're not under arrest." Charlotte's eyes welled up. Tom exhaled in disbelief. "You're serious?" Marsh nodded. "We're taking Brenda Carlisle down." But before the relief could sink in, Erica whispered, "You need to know something else. Tom and Charlotte looked up. Erica's face was pale. There's someone higher than Brenda. Someone funding this whole operation. Tom asked, who? Erica's lips trembled. She only called him the architect. Tom froze. The architect? Charlotte looked from Erica to Detective Marsh, her voice barely a whisper. Who is he? Erica swallowed hard. I never saw his face. But Brenda mentioned him, always in code. He funds the board, picks the properties, decides who gets pushed out. Brenda's just his tool. Detective Marsh stepped forward. We've heard of this architect before. He's been linked to HOA takeovers in 3 other states. Each time, the same pattern: predatory rule changes, strategic foreclosures, and fast-flipped real estate sold to shell companies. Tom's fists clenched. So we're just pawns in a giant land scam. Marsh nodded grimly. Exactly. And your case might be the key that brings the whole empire down. 2 weeks later. The investigation moved fast. Brenda Carlisle was arrested at her office and charged with multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and forgery. Charles Denton disappeared overnight, but not before authorities froze all his assets. The rest of the HOA board resigned in disgrace, and Lakeside's homeowners began organizing their own interim board. But the architect? He remained a ghost. Until Erica got a call from a blocked number. The voice on the other end was calm. Too calm. You made a mistake. Erica trembled as she recorded the call. Who is this? I trusted you. Now they'll come for you too. The line went dead. She rushed the recording to Detective Marsh. Within hours, tech analysts traced the call to a private office suite in downtown Houston, leased under a real estate development group tied to over a dozen flipped HOA properties across Texas. The name on the lease? Marcus Harlan. CEO of Harlan and Duval Real Estate. Billionaire developer. Regular donor to city campaigns. And the man who had once given a community revitalization speech alongside Brenda Carlisle. Marsh's team moved in. Inside Marcus Harlan's office, they found burner phones, encrypted laptops, and files, hundreds of them, tracking HOA boards across the state. Each file had detailed breakdowns: property value, likelihood of owner resistance, timeline to foreclosure, resale projection. On the wall, a single framed blueprint. Lakeside 2.0, luxury townhomes. Projected start, January. Charlotte stared at it, stunned. They were going to wipe out the whole neighborhood. But there was one thing more chilling than all the files and maps. A photo. It showed Tom, Charlotte, and Lily, smiling in front of their home, the week they moved in. On the back, scribbled in red marker. High value target. Low resistance. 1 month later. The Millers were back in court, not as defendants, but as witnesses. News crews lined the steps outside. The story had made national headlines: HOA nightmare uncovered, families targeted in billion-dollar real estate scam. Erica testified. So did James Simmons and 4 other former homeowners who had nearly lost everything. Tom stood before the court, holding Lily's hand. We weren't just attacked financially. We were emotionally destroyed. My daughter still wakes up crying, asking if someone's coming to take our new home. He paused. But we fought back. And now, we're asking for justice. Not just for us, but for every family who was told to stay quiet, to follow the rules while those rules were used to destroy them. The courtroom was silent. Then the judge spoke. With overwhelming evidence, and in light of ongoing federal investigation, the court orders restitution to all affected families, and issues a permanent injunction against Harlan and Duval's involvement in HOA boards across the state. Gasps filled the room. Justice, finally. 6 months later. The Millers moved into a modest but beautiful new home, not in Lakeside, but in a community built on trust and transparency. Lily's new school had a garden, and she was allowed to paint butterflies on the sidewalk. Tom joined a local advocacy group for HOA reform. Charlotte began writing a blog that went viral, HOA Nightmares, What They Don't Want You to Know. And Erica? She started a nonprofit to help whistleblowers come forward. But even with justice served, they all knew one thing. The architect had been stopped, this time. But as long as greed lived in shadows, there would always be another blueprint. If you like this story, comment, share and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.